Welcome, dear viewers, here in our Nature Medicine format. Today we have something very special for you. Please stay tuned. It is so important that we can do something at home that is extremely good for our health. Not that someone else is doing something for you, but that you can do it for yourself. We'll get started after the intro. Stay tuned. Here we are again. My two guests today are Stefan Wagner and Andreas Walker. Welcome, you two. I can already say that I'm a big fan of you. You brought me something. It's standing down here. We're talking about this topic today, dear viewers. It's about the fact that we can take 10,000 steps in 8 minutes. Please tell us about it. You are the developer, but you also developed the predecessor of this device. Yes, the one I have at home, right?
Yes.
It was also a great thing.
It was a great development. It was the very first machine. We called it a vibration device because it worked with a rocker. The whole development was intended for prevention or therapy in the osteoporosis area. That was the original idea that came out of it. We developed a communal tomography in the past. We wanted to measure densities. That was a request from various universities in Germany. We wanted to know more. What can you do? Maybe not just measure, but also therapy.
Is this device still called a vibration plate today?
No. Vibration plate is a generic term. In fact, vibration is not necessarily useful for the human body. We need oscillation. Our cells oscillate. Our breathing oscillates. Our heart oscillates, always with sine waves. Everything that moves in our body oscillates in the sine wave area. These sine waves are not disturbing for the human body.
What does sine wave mean?
It is a harmonic wave, which is represented in physics as a harmonic oscillation. 1 oscillation is 1 hertz. 1 hertz is 1 movement cycle per second. We can oscillate here with 5 to 28 hertz. That means your entry into the 10,000 steps per 8 minutes only runs at a certain frequency. Yes, 17 to 18 hertz. Then you have taken about 10,000 steps per 8 minutes.
Let's look at our viewers. Those who are sitting at home, we all have too little movement. We have back pain, we have knee problems, we have circulation problems, one or the other varicose vein. What does this device do when I stand on it?
Depending on which body region you use. When you stand on it, the disturbances are transmitted to the human body from below. The body reacts immediately to this disturbance. Any movement we make outside can lead to a disturbance. Just think of a sidewalk. At the edge of a sidewalk, or in a field, a hall, when there is an uneven ground, there are disturbances that affect the human body. These disturbances must be immediately regulated by the central nervous system, so that we never have trouble to leave our upright walk. These disturbances we create with this sine wave on the human body have the function to give as many disturbances as possible to the human body, so that it must react to the disturbances that he can balance out again. We do nothing but regulation. We do nothing but disturb the human body. But very important, not with the vibration, but with a wave of oscillation, a sine wave that oscillates without having physiological negative influences. We also have the very important advantage here that we do not have to stand wide-legged or very tight on this plate, or certain positions, or only with one leg on it. We stand on it as we are designed. With O legs, with X legs, whatever, we can stand on it. We have a 0 position. On the 0 position, very, very little oscillation is brought only to the forefoot. This means that anyone who is immobilized, who may also have dizziness problems, can stand on it and get used to the device very slowly. The further you go forward or back, the amplitude changes, i.e. the height of the deviation. This means that the further you go forward to the maximum position, or you could even stand with your heels on the maximum position, there you have the highest amplitude. This will of course cause a lot of difficulties for the beginner, for an untrained person. I would recommend everyone to start in the zero position first.
Sure, of course.
To just let it work on itself. And then it works, without exaggeration, with almost 100% of everyone who tries it, whether healthy or sick, positive for the first time. There is a positive circulation experience. There is a positive experience because serotonin is released, such happiness hormones, which then begin to release after 30 seconds. So even without a therapy approach for certain diseases, it has a positive effect on the human body.
So I can use this at home problem-free myself.
Yes.
From now on, it is also very widespread in the field of physiotherapists, of doctors who work with it, to train mobility, regeneration, and so on. Right?
Yes. In principle, we always say that it should be in every household.
Yes, I understand.
It is of course a high price story because we put value on, may I also say so, on Swiss television, on Made in Germany. So this former important for us component, yes. It should not go defective, should always work, should always be available to the user, whether at home with a physiotherapist or a health practitioner or in hospitals, because the tool is very, very important, no matter if it's prevention or therapy.
Excuse me for this very short interruption, but we would like to ask you to subscribe to this channel. Thank you very much, and have fun. And now you just told me in advance that you always had back pain, you had knee pain, and you do it every day. Since then it's gone.
Yes, I have to say I'm the biggest fan myself. I do it every day, if possible, because I used to be a footballer, although not a professional footballer. But like most footballers, they all have knee problems afterwards. And I thought, oh, now you'll get caught at some point with meniscus surgery or whatever. And since I've been using the Siwave, I don't have that problem anymore. I always had the same with back pain. I always had big problems with back pain. And since you can train the deep muscles with the Siwave, of course my back has become much more stable, and I really don't have any more problems. And that's why I'm actually a big fan of it myself.
And it's not just the knees and the back, it's actually the whole musculature of the whole body that is constantly put under stress and counter-regulated. And in this regard, it is also trained, right?
Exactly. You can really say that. For example, I really like to walk. Before I go for a walk, I put myself on the device, because afterwards I walk much easier. I can't describe it. It's just a feeling. You feel like you're going down from the device, as if you're walking on a cloud. And I do the same after training. And of course I have many acquaintances who, for example, are active in the sport, who also have a device, which, for example, greatly reduces the risk of injury if they train on the device beforehand, because the musculature is already warm, the whole body is well circulated. Personally, I have to say that it helps a lot to get in shape quickly. And of course, coordination and balance. You notice the differences. You notice that extremely.
One of the most important components for health is movement. It doesn't take a lot, but it does. And here, we have the opportunity to do this at home, at least for the people who don't go out that often. You get stiffer, you get more and more inflexible, and
But here at home, you have the opportunity to train that. That's the problem with a lot of people. We all don't have time. We don't want to go to the gym either. Then we have to change. Then we have to look for a parking lot. Then we might have to wait, depending. And so, it is very practical that I can actually stay fit at home every day. And from a certain age, it is simply, I think, indispensable that you do something. And we now know how important it is that we keep our muscles fit and that the risk of falling is much lower. In many sports, I have a lot more performance. That is simply proven.
I got an email from Professor Dr. Kurt Diem from the Max Grundig Clinic. He writes that he has observed an improvement in mobility, coordination, muscle function, and muscle structure in morbus Parkinson, in osteoporosis, or after a stroke. And I think that's a big term, from morbus Parkinson to osteoporosis. How do you explain that to yourself?
The connection, the interplay between the central nervous system, the entire nervous system, the synapses up to the muscles and back again. This circuit has to work cleanly in itself and has to work without disturbance at every point in this circuit. So if we train with such a device, of course we can influence this circuit at every point with disturbances. Whether we apply disturbances to the central nervous system through muscle activity as a return or from another point is in principle completely irrelevant. The only important thing is that we actually get this circuit in motion. This improves blood circulation. That's the main thing of a healthy body, is in good blood circulation. We have provided the supply of minerals, trace elements all the time. But we may also have microcirculation in regions that are not properly blood circulated. Excellent results. And also because we get to the central nervous system through the muscles, via the circuit to the nerves, the disturbances to the central nervous system would also be brought to the neurological connections. So it is to explain why our Professor Diem has come to this result at this point.
It's amazing, isn't it?
The entire motion device is dependent not only on the muscles or on the skeleton, but also on the control through the nerves. So neurology plays a role, orthopedics, and of course also the whole system with the muscles, ligaments, everything that has to work in connection. Ultimately, of course, also the oxygen supply has to work, so we need enough oxygen in the blood. The lungs have to work, and of course our diet has to match accordingly in order to keep a body 100% functional. That's every disturbance we get from the outside. If it's positive through such a motion device, it's an advantage. If it's negative, an accident or malnutrition, then it's going in the other direction.
Last week, I heard a very nice report about osteoporosis on German health television. A professor also talked about it, and he actually advised everyone to look at the musculature, that the muscles are also in order with osteoporosis, that you build up well, that you train a lot. And that, in the event of a fall, of course you don't fall down that fast if you have better musculature. But even if you fall down, the musculature protects accordingly. And that's a great way to do these exercises at home with this motion device and keep yourself fit accordingly.
I always say that getting healthy and old is the most beautiful thing we can plan. We can do a lot, and such a device is really something that is very valuable in my opinion. If you move too little or move one-sidedly. I like to go to the fitness center, but that's also in one-sided muscle movements. That's why I enjoy the device that I still have at home. But that's the 2.0. That's the much further development. The beginnings, I think the vibration plates, we started 20, 30 years ago. Today we are much further, right? What is the very special thing here?
What was important at the time was the development of a first vibration machine. Professor Nazarov had tried to keep the muscles with the space shuttle in zero gravity with a very simple vibration device. That was actually the initiator. That was the initiator.
Mr. Nazarov, I still have the medical devices in the clinic.
That was in the 1970s. He made the first vibration devices, and there he made attempts, the space shuttle, which may be in zero gravity for days or weeks, which lose muscle there, then to retain it, or to lose less muscle. Building on that, that was a great coincidence. I got to know Professor Nazarov in the early 90s, about a sports scientist in the Pfalz. And then the idea was born, let's build a vibration device. Let's try what happens there. In advance, we built the computer tomography and developed it, and then it somehow fit together. Osteoporosis and muscle retention and post-retention. That was then somehow a symbiosis that could possibly fit together. Let's build a device like that. And the first attempts that we made then came true, that muscle retention was actually possible through the training on such a vibration device. There is the so-called Pedres study, Bertha Emil Dora Pedres study in the Charité in Berlin. There it was found that with vibration devices in people who lie motionless in bed, only through the vibration can they retain the musculature. In a large study, anyone can read it.
Yes, but it is also logical. Everything that the body does not need, it breaks down. But if it needs it, because of the incentive, and it has to regulate, it is logical.
And the incentive is actually enough with a few minutes a day. Only the development that we did there without actually knowing it was not optimal. The question that came up at some point was that people who used our devices, the first developments, talked about problems that were not there before. Of course, it should not happen to a manufacturer that we cause more damage or cause other damage. I don't want to emphasize damage so clearly. So changes, negative changes, were visible in the body that should not be there. And in the study at Dr. Harder in Munich, it was found that the vibration devices that are on the market actually cause disturbances to the human body that are not physiologically fair. And they must not be there. Otherwise, we can cause better blood circulation. We can also cause better metabolism. We can also retain muscles. But we do nothing good to the body in certain body regions.
Yes, I have already heard that. You can also cause damage with these devices that are too cheap.
In order to avoid this, our research results over 10 years actually show that we have to do something else. We have to put the disturbances that disturb the human body in such a way that they are not negatively affected by the human body. So as few counterindications as possible. And this is achieved with Siwave. You absolutely need a zero position so that the person who trains on it can get used to it. Not immediately in all directions is disturbed so strongly that he has no fun in the training. That was the first. The second important insight was to bring the forces that arise physiologically to the human body. But for this, it is necessary that I do not put my individual step width of my body structure against my body structure on the machine, but put it on how I am built. Then the disturbances are then brought into the human body correctly, and very, very important is the sine wave. That was the absolute breakthrough when we worked with the real sine wave. That was at the Institute Bollig in Vienna. You could see that the Hertz rate variability is an absolutely important parameter, that this Hertz rate variability is in a positive rule, so that therapy would be possible at all. So very, very bad stress parameters, very, very bad Hertz rate variability even prevent the recovery of a cold.
I have a video here, and I would like to briefly point it out, and viewers ask to take a look at what it is about. If it runs, now it should run. Exactly. So 10,000 steps in 8 minutes. That's a sensation, and we'll see what it looks like. The machine simply improves your health, stimulates the running. That's cool.
You can see that when a person trains, he should first be in the zero position, and when the machine then runs.
Are there restrictions? 100 kg per person, 120 kg.
300 kg we can put on it.
So really great for everyone.
Let's take a look. Right and left are different. Yes, that's side by side. That's how people also walk.
Yes, good. Let's continue very slowly. Ah, it's a bit difficult with the mouse, but we can do it. Generate sine waves, yes.
You can see that when the person is at the very back in the zero position, the forefoot is mainly moved, and the further forward you come, the greater the amplitude.
Very good. Everything is circulating through.
The circulation is stimulated. After about 30 seconds, we have about twice the flow rate that goes through the body, i.e. the minerals that are necessary, trace elements, everything that is necessary becomes much more, even with medication. Imagine you have pain at the bottom of your foot and take painkillers. How is the medication supposed to know where it is supposed to have an effect? It works all over the body, but it can stimulate regions that are better circulated and thus have a much better yield of this medication.
Let's move on. Activation of blood circulation is logical. Yes, the blood runs, medication, nutrients, flexibility and balance is also logical.
Excellent balancing exercise.
Yes, exactly. You throw the side out, and then it's also stimulated.
Yes, the whole body does it. In standing, of course, much more the legs, clearly up to the chest area.
But you can also sit on it.
You can sit on it and put your hands on it. In principle, you can train the whole body.
Stimulation of the lymph system is also something that you usually do.
A very special exercise to do lymph training for the legs. You can do it lying down. There are very many examples of training programs that are also being developed by Stefan Wagner again and again, because he is permanently dealing with new other diseases or more or less severe diseases that are then also being developed with the conditions that exist for the device.
We'll talk about that later. We'll go on. I liked the video so much when I really saw the person. The nervous system is strengthened.
If you see here that the oscillation is very strong and goes up, is not completely right. That would happen if a completely untrained person who has fascia adhesions and the back is very hard or stiff. With him, the oscillation goes high up in the head. After a short time of training with our machine, this will no longer be the case.
Very good. Muscles are trained.
Now we are probably standing on the machine on max power, so that actually a much stronger training is the result. Of course, we do not recommend this to everyone immediately, but only high-performance athletes can then use the machine to the maximum frequency and maximum amplitude. Then it will be for most if they come so far with their training. Then we have a therapy-worthy person suddenly in the range of a top athlete.
Discover your favorite experts on Wikisana now.
It does not always succeed immediately. Certainly not immediately, but it succeeds more and more that people who are actually the most difficult to mobilize sit in a wheelchair where functions are still there and who actually come out of the wheelchair and are able to walk again without the help of others. This is also the case with the severe brain stroke patients in the Schlossklinik in Bad Dürkheim who use 2 devices to achieve much better results than with manual therapy.
I would like to stand on it for a moment. Is that okay? With or without shoes?
You can do whatever you want. You can do it with shoes or without shoes.
With shoes. Sure, with shoes.
No problem.
With the verse, like this.
If the camera can see me, you can turn it on.
Yes, stand upright, very upright.
Well, then you can't see my head anymore. But it doesn't matter.
Oh, yes.
Now the lowest hertz rate is 5 hertz at the moment. And we say 17 hertz is the ideal at the beginning. You see, it's swinging back and forth now, but I don't feel it in my back.
I don't feel it in my arms either. I only feel it a little in my legs.
You have to push your legs all the way through so that they are really stiff. Then it goes up to the chest.
Oh, and the bladder.
The bladder too, of course.
Exactly, okay.
In order to completely empty the bladder.
And if I go forward?
Then it gets more and more. The further you go forward, but without having to spread your legs. You just have to go forward.
Do my steps count now?
It probably doesn't. That would be too nice. But you see, the movement always goes up and down. And it's very, very pleasant.
Very important in the training on the machine. You're actually doing it quite right, that you should move on it. So light gymnastic exercises that you also know from school at a young age.
Thank you.
Go to the toe tip, go into the squat, upper body forward and back, move sideways, rotate the upper body. He can do all the exercises that we know from the past on it. You should do that too. Don't just stand on it.
Yes, I also made such a movement, a mobility adjustment. So just stretch a little, and it keeps going down, down, down.
And you feel it yourself. When you're on the machine, you feel where your problem is. And you automatically control it yourself. So that you basically, everyone has something like that. Muscle shortening, or just fascia. You feel that in that moment. And then you do it accordingly. And you better it over time. That's the great thing.
Inflammatory processes.
Inflammatory processes.
If you have inflammatory processes somewhere, knee back problem, or maybe also fascia adhesions, then you can rotate yourself like that on the machine until you notice, oh, now I got it right. Now I'm in that position. Stay there for a short time, but don't go away again. So then you can get rid of inflammatory processes very, very quickly. Sciatica problems, for example, in the lower back area, pain up to the thoracic vertebrae area, in the standing position. As I said, you can sit on it. There we have very, very good results in the area of stress incontinence. Excellent results. Or after prostate surgery, if people actually can't hold the water anymore. For some reason, if you sit on it and do it on this machine at the appropriate position, this is also a very, very important advantage. You can adjust the amplitude by sitting in the direction of zero line or in the direction of the maximum line. Adjust the amplitude in such a way as I am able to do it for the current situation for 3 or 5 minutes. And at that time I do pelvic gymnastics. And I guarantee, I can say that it gets much better for everyone. Up to healing. Difficult to make the healing statement like that. But we actually have, based on our studies, the studies that exist, and the case studies that we have, about 70 to 80%, which after this time, no longer talk about any problems in this area.
In the end, it gives the body the chance for self-healing.
Right, exactly.
Oxygen is transported. Nutrients are transported.
Exactly.
It is stimulated, and it is logical.
The muscles are trained. The ligaments shorten. That means the muscles can work better again. But because the machine with 17 hertz, up to 17 hertz, these are therapeutic effects. In addition, it is more muscle building and anaerobic to increase storage. So to absorb more oxygen in the muscle. These are the larger frequencies, up to 28 hertz, or in the neuronal area. Then you also need the higher frequency, but the frequency up to 17 hertz, which are very, very effective therapeutically. You can change muscles, shorten the ligaments, so that muscle activity is much, much better again, especially sphincter muscle. They work again.
Do you know who approached me with this device for the first time? A reigning boxing world champion, Senetgashi. He approached me.
He is totally excited about the device.
He said, Alexander, you have to report about it, because it is so important.
He swore at the device.
Yes, he got the stone rolling. And as I said, you ran into open doors with me. Now my important question is, you never want to buy the cat in the bag, and with such a great, high-quality device, you would like to test it first. So the viewers at home and say, hey, that interests me a lot. Can I test it? And if so, where? How? How is the handling with you?
So you can test it. You can test it in our showrooms that we have, once in Switzerland and in Germany. Once we have the opportunity to test it in Sursee, that's at Lucerne. Or we have the opportunity in Germany, for example in Stuttgart. Or we have the possibility in Berlin. Depending, Hamburg, just ask us. And then we can also say where you can test it, where you already have the device, where you can try it, or own exhibition rooms from us. Or you can also make it available to the customer.
That can also happen.
Yes, that can also happen.
Can you also rent it? If I ask the question so openly.
There is also the possibility to rent it.
Because once you have tested it, once or twice a month, I think, nobody gives it back.
Alexander, I can tell you, so far, Everyone who has rented it has bought it. We have never received a rental device, because we always have to make new devices. And they say after 2 weeks, we want to keep it, because they immediately notice how well it works.
The pure question is, such a machine is here and should be therapeutically effective. Should improve performance. High price. It is perfectly understandable that people then say, where can I test it? How can I test it? We are not dodging this. On the contrary, so very often it is so that people, after 3 or 4 days, say the thing has to stay. We won't give it back. And very often it is after 10 days the lastest. There are of course also therapy applications or diseases. You have to have a little more testing time. But there is also the rental time. That you say, I can't afford such a machine for so much money. I want to try it. I want to test it. I want to rent it for 3 months, if possible. No device has come back yet.
But you can also say what is very interesting, 85%, 90%, buy it. They are so convinced. We live off our references from other people. We have streets. There are 3 devices next to each other. One neighbor flew on vacation and said, you can have it for 3 weeks. After 2.5 weeks, they called us in panic. They urgently need the device. The neighbor is coming back, and you can see how convincing it is. We have 1 street. I think there are 4 houses next to each other. 4 devices are there. It's amazing.
Is there a homepage, a list of medical indications, what speaks for the device?
You can look under siwave.eu or siwave.ch. There are all kinds of clinical tests in there. There are references in there. You can get information about the device in detail.
Cool, great.
In principle, you can say very simply, orthopedics, performance improvements in athletes, neurology, all these diseases, muscle pain. In principle, there is nothing where you can see that there is a restriction. Even with severe arthrosis patients, we can help. We can actually rebuild cartilages. There is a study in the University of Munich. It runs for a longer time, of course. You can't do that in a month or 2. We can clearly say from the first results that we can rebuild the cartilages. It's a long-lasting thing. It may take as long as you can get arthrosis problems. It takes time for it to get back to normal. We can take a lot of pain from people to get around an operation.
What I personally think is fantastic, we have a lot of universities who have bought the device because they are so excited about the professors that they want to do tests themselves, want to do studies themselves. That's great, of course. I find that super exciting.
Still, it's not in their heads yet.
No.
That's why I'm so happy that you're here and that you're introducing it to us. I don't even know how I tell the viewers how amazed I am, especially for people who have too little movement, too little mobility. I don't even want to know what this could do in a retirement home where older people really have too little movement.
The device also has special holders for older people. That's for the normal person. But for people who are not so fit, there is a special attachment that they can hold on to. That's also there, of course.
Do you get good advice? So that you really have the right thing at home, in rent or for sale.
You can call us at any time for information. We will advise in detail. As I said, there are also many private people who also have this attachment, because they unfortunately can no longer walk so well or are insecure.
But they come away from this attachment again, right?
Alexander, we have a lot of people, it's no joke, who have come away from their walker.
90.
That sounds crazy, but it's true. I could tell you stories. It's incredible. It's great that we are lucky to make so many people happy. That's something very special. It's just madness. I am grateful that there is luck.
I am also grateful that you introduced me to this. I would like to thank you very much. It's a cool thing. I don't know if I should give you back this again. We'll talk about it later, dear viewers.
If I may, at the very end I would like to mention that there are different sizes. It starts with a small machine called Home. It's a small device for everyone at home.
It's even smaller?
Yes, it's a small device, but it's fully functional. Just like this device, it has additional movements for the ankles.
A wobble function.
Yes, there is a wobble function. It's unique. It's very important for our ankle. Also for the overall movement, because we don't just walk like this, but also move sideways sometimes. These disturbances on this big device are generated additionally. With the small device, with certain movements on the device can be achieved in the same way. It's a cheap entry-level device with the Home device. It goes from the basic device to the Siwave Plus with gangway. In principle, everyone can train with it, even people who sit in a wheelchair, who sit entirely in a wheelchair. I don't know if I can say it like that. The pleasure to get to know someone who sits in a wheelchair, and there, according to the medical profession, should actually stay seated. He had a hereditary sensory motor neuropathy, and it suddenly appeared. I didn't understand why it suddenly appeared and was so manifested. I can prove it with films we made about it. He was sitting in a wheelchair. It was the first time on the machine. We took him out of the wheelchair. He was sitting in the wheelchair. We took him out of the wheelchair. We had to lift him out of the wheelchair to get him on the machine. Then he could stand on it with help. And 14 days later, 2 weeks later, I can prove it with examples. 2 weeks later, he went down the stairs alone with a package in his hand. We had exactly the position that was determined by plugs, by protein molecules that were in the synapse. We were able to solve the synapse. We were able to solve the permeability. We were able to bring the hormones back into motion. And that's how this hereditary sensory motor neuropathy wasn't cured. But we were able to restore the permeability so that he could walk. As soon as he had interrupted training, it got worse again. But with each training, the time factor where it got worse again got bigger. I can prove that.
I saw that there is a pillow on it.
Yes.
What was it meant for?
It was meant for the pelvic floor area. So if someone sits on it, it makes it more comfortable. If he kneels on it, there are many different mats where you can do all kinds of exercises. You can train the back, you can train the knees. I'm not allowed to name names on this device or identical device. There were already big football personalities on it who had ankle injuries. I'm not allowed to name names, but they're doing very well. They play football very well because the device is able to influence the ankle very intensely through this wobble function. But back to your question, these mats are also very popular because many people have problems with the pelvic floor. Women, for example, often have incontinence problems and can also improve their performance on the device. Prostate massages, as he said. We know from clinics that doctors let patients sit on them and they have very good results. These mats are very comfortable, even for lymphs, for example. If you lie down, you can lie down lower and your legs are higher. You can see all of this on the homepage.
There's a doctor here today, who I'll interview later, who also did a study on Parkinson's patients.
Exactly.
The Dr. Zeiser Seuss, we met her by chance. She did something in Parkinson's development and research. After her official activity, she started to do research. I do this permanently. I do research again and again. Sometimes one is not enough. We need more. We met, and we're going in a direction that is very interesting. We don't know where the end is or where the beginning is. I think we're on the right track. If we run into a dead end, we have to get out of it. But then, we need a lot of conversations with the professors in all kinds of medical fields. We like to do that. I'm glad that Dr. Zeiser Seuss is here too. She can tell us about her experience with our device.
I'm stretching this show to a double show because it's so important. You said earlier that from 1 to 17 hertz is the range where you train the muscles in the body.
Exactly. It's a range where you relax. We know a lot about our customers. We also have customers with migraines. If they have migraines and stand on it at 17 hertz, that will help them a lot. I can't tell everyone. I can only tell what the customers tell us.
Do you collect this information?
Yes, we collect it. You can see it in the future. There are many things that amaze me. For example, psychologists who say that their patients are more positive. That's probably because of the hormones that are released, because people tend to get depressed. All these things amaze me again and again. I know a story that's very interesting. It's not far from our company. A man or his daughter called us and said, "My father is still sitting in the chair. He doesn't do anything anymore. He can't get down the stairs. Don't you have a treadmill for him?" Then a representative gave it to me. I talked to the lady and asked, "What do you want with the treadmill? He'll directly fly out at the back. He can't do anything with it." I said, "I'll come over myself. Bring the device." Then I brought the Siwave. The man was 78 years old. A very nice man, very corpulent. I said, "Please stand on it." The man stood on it. You could really see how he was shining. I'll buy it. I don't give it back. The man bought the device and trained regularly. I swear to you, after half a year his wife, and he came to us in the car and said, yes, you just came from the Lake Constance. They ran there. We run a lot now. The man was so grateful to me. I can't imagine that. I didn't do anything special. I just sold him the device.
He still has to stand on it himself.
The great thing is, and it always strikes us, people are lazy. They don't want to do anything. It's best to just stand on it. The great thing is, here you just have to stand on it. The rest is done by the device. You have to make a little movement. How often do I come to private homes? They have built-in fitness studios, but people don't do it because they don't feel like it.
You can do that in front of the TV.
Many. How often do you think it's in the living room?
We have exercises that last an hour. For lymphatic drainage, for example, it actually takes an hour. You can choose the right broadcast on the TV. You put your legs on it and watch TV. Then it's an hour later. Possibly they fall asleep before because they are relaxed.
You just mentioned a lymphatic program that lasts an hour. Not 8 minutes, but an hour. How do I get this knowledge again? I could also do lymphatic exercises. Do I have to lie on the floor, put my feet up, 17 hertz or what? Is there a manual?
For these corresponding diseases, there is direct advice either from me, or from Stefan, or from our other representatives. In the beginning, in most cases, it is the case that for people who have the same disease, even if it is the same disease, for example, knee problems, I still have 3 different programs for 3 different people. But the basics are the same. And with lymphatic drainage, it was just like this. Dr. Hardert in Munich works as a physiotherapist with a connection to orthopedics as a practice. The other way around, actually. Had orthopedics as a practice, where his wife works as an orthopedist, and additionally a physiotherapy exclusively working with vibration. There I have to say vibration because the earlier devices are there from us or from other manufacturers, but lately only Siwave. So these oscillation devices works exclusively with oscillation devices and gets rid of all possible diseases. There it was then researched that lymphatic drainage actually works lying down with the appropriate matting set. The training time should be at least 30 minutes, so that the lymph actually empties and the water comes out. Better an hour. You can experience this through experiments with different test subjects. I wanted to say something about the frequencies, 5 to 28 Hz. Why this 17 Hz? 17 Hz has also shown a clear research that up to 17 Hz frequency on the machine, which is in the position, the central nervous system, to switch the flexor and the rectus muscles alternately. If you go higher with the frequency 18-20 Hz, then there is a permanent tone. That means flexor and rectus muscles switch on at the same time. Then there is a permanent tone. This permanent tone then leads to the anaerobic storage, the storage filled with oxygen working longer. So this oxygen memory gets bigger. This means you can go longer without oxygen supply, go longer distances, or even run. You may know this shop window disease, where you have to stop for 3 steps and have to breathe again to get oxygen into the muscles. With this training with increased frequency, I can make this oxygen memory bigger again. The lower frequency from 5 to 12 Hz is more like a massage effect, a relaxation. But also very important factors, for example, the sacroiliac joint in the lower back area. I can solve it excellently if I only train with 5 to 8 or a maximum of 10 Hz. But with high amplitude. These are all training programs, which each of us gets described exactly. And in special cases, there is a training program tailored to the patient.
Wow. What is not yet quite clear is, I am healthy, I have nothing. But I think this is totally logical, and I have to have it. But I don't have any health indications. Should I have a need somewhere? Do I have to call and say I have this indication? What would be the program for it? Or is there a directory?
There is also a kind of directory with us, yes. But I have to say there are so many who have no disease, who have it. I can give a good example. We have a lot of golfers, for example. And we also have a golf manager. I don't want to name the name, but he was a manager of very famous boxers. And he bought a device in Hamburg. And he trained hard on it. And suddenly, he won the golf tournament. And then he called, or his wife called and said, "Unbelievable, my husband won the golf tournament." And he swears on it that he did it because of the device. I said, "Yes, well, I can tell. Believe you when you say that. Yes. But we absolutely need this now in Mallorca, in our house." I bought a second device for Mallorca. And we have an extreme number of golfers who tell us on the phone, they say they play golf much better.
The overall constitution is better. The sequences are better. The side equality is better. Every top athlete, like in Friedrichshafen in the national volleyball team, achieves results in the performance increase. They are not doping, in principle doping, but legal doping. You don't have to throw anything in there, neither toothpaste nor anything else.
I don't even want to know how many orthopedic operations we can save.
Certainly.
That's also the great thing. We haven't said that yet. We have a lot of people who have artificial joint or knee joint. They can train on this device without any problems.
We might have to talk about the contraindications.
I saw something on this video I would like to go to again. There was something at the very end. Let it run. Training in the smallest room. Everything is fine. Fitness training, brain stimulation, great. And now it comes down here. Down there. There. I found that important. Great, you can't read it. But in pregnancy,
there are different contraindications that you have to address. As a manufacturer, you have to be careful with our medical statements. But it is clear healthy people won't get hurt. Even with longer training, the disorders on the human body are physiologically just. We have a sinus wave. Does not bother the healthy body. Everyone can choose his amplitude freely. Longer training means more stress. Disturbances on the human body. Longer running means more stress. It could lead to sore muscles. Sore muscles are a status. You have to repair it, but they come at a higher level. What you have to say when you are highly pregnant, you should not use the device. Just sit in front of it. Put your legs or hands up. Sure, with lymph congestion, yes, that's possible. That is possible. But a pregnant woman, we can't recommend to stand on it.
There are no studies.
You shouldn't do that. Everyone should decide if he wants to do it. But we as manufacturers can't recommend it. Furthermore, when a new fracture is present, don't stand on the device. Unless you have a hand fracture, then you can stand on the device. But don't go with your hands. What is very important, although doctors say that we promote circulation and can dissolve thrombus, is a contraindication. Those are closure. Thrombs shouldn't be standing on the device. Or have the doctor's advice, because the blood circulation, the microcirculation that is stimulated there, affects the thrombus to become less. But it shouldn't dissolve because it is stuck somewhere. That's why we as manufacturers can't recommend to use the machine if you are thrombus endangered, or with medical advice, or a doctor who has such a device and does it consciously with the right training program. There are enough who do it where you can get rid of such thrombs. If you can do it once, then train regularly and you won't have a closure.
Understandable.
Yes. A good example I can say myself, because I also suffered from varicose veins. If you stand on the device regularly, your varicose veins will disappear sooner or later. That's true.
Many ladies listen carefully.
Cellulite is a big topic. I had good experiences with different women. Mainly women. We men.
So cellulite and varicose veins? The upper ones, the blue ones.
You have to imagine the blood, it is tingling a bit, because all the small blood vessels are suddenly circulated. You can feel it. It tingles a bit depending on your Hertz rate. And accordingly, the things are dismantled.
Extremely logical. Always the same. Cellulite is a deposit of waste into the connective tissue. That's why it happens.
We only have to stimulate the connective blood flow. Yes, then it will flow out, dissolves, but you have to be ready to reach the performance limit every day. To approach it with discipline, to train at least 5 days a week.
There are many women
with different frequencies. But if you have the momentum and you get the point where it goes up, then it goes very fast, that the weakness of the connective tissue dissolves.
How long do you train?
5 minutes minimum.
That's nothing.
You can't imagine how even 5 minutes for some people can't make that time in a day. That they find 5 minutes for such a training. Have to do that, and that they could do it much better, and in a shorter time they would have less pain. I am always asked if I can lose weight.
Yes, and?
Of course I can lose weight. I pick the device up and go around the house.
No.
That would be one possibility. To be honest, just standing on the machine means very little energy consumption. But because I am more mobile, it is easier for me to walk, to run. I can go longer distances. It is much easier for me, and that's why I have a higher output.
Or I take weights in my hand. I can of course accelerate the weight loss. Or there are such vests, such weight vests. And accordingly, I have more weight on my body, and of course I lose weight.
But that is actually the training on the device. Training as such is what helps. But of course you have higher friction on the muscles, because the muscle would be bigger. And then I already have a higher metabolic rate. But maybe a tenth of what I would actually use if I move properly, if I stimulate metabolism. But I can actually stimulate metabolism better. If I feel like walking, I go. If I have pain, I prefer to sit on the couch and watch the news.
What is also interesting is stress. Stress and pain, for example.
Serotonin, all the hormones are stimulated. We are currently preparing studies to understand what the hormones in total, the approx 100 hormones that can be found in the human body, what they are like with each other, in relation to digestion, to mobility, to neurology, what they mean. Dopamine, for example. As we know now, that is also a discovery. I have developed it or I discovered it. Dopamine is not produced less, but the dopamine is stimulated less by the nerve pathways because it is apparently less needed. So dopamine is produced in the brain, but not in excess, but only as much as is called out what the human body needs. This is also a very important natural property in evolution. It was very important that not everything is produced in excess, because it costs energy. Energy means it has to be taken in. So everything that is produced uselessly has to come back as food in the human body, so that energy is available.
So that is perhaps the key, why such Parkinson's patients are so successful with it.
Exactly the key. You need dopamine to transmit. But if the transmission is disturbed by protein molecules, which form there as plugs, and then the dopamine cannot be transmitted, then it means for the other substances in the brain that we do not need so much dopamine. Then it becomes bigger and bigger, this vicious circle.
We have to get to the end, but ultimately it also relieves stress.
This is an extremely exciting story that we have to tackle, and we work with different universities together. A lot in southern Germany, but also in all of Germany, even worldwide, who are interested in doing much more there.
So relieving stress, I have heard about this parameter. And so something like this is also suitable for a company.
Yes, of course.
To put it in a cafeteria and to give its employees 5 minutes of wellness.
I want to tell a very short, funny story. We had an exhibition in December or November at the train station in Zurich. It was pretty cold. And then we all always stood on the device. And although we train regularly, and the device warms the feet, thank God. And we probably had an exhibition for 10 hours at the end. So everyone has about an hour on the device. After 3 days, we had all sore muscles. That was just a funny story.
But didn't freeze.
No, we didn't freeze, because people who have cold feet also like to stand on it. It's clear because you stimulate the blood circulation. We have extremely high blood circulation. So exercises that we did on the machine, always cold hands, lying on it for 5 minutes, extremely hot. With the carpal tunnel syndrome, so those who have the deaf hands, 5 minutes of training, gone.
So we've just torn a lot. It's hard to believe. But everything is logical when the body is put in the position like through a higher circulation, through stimuli, to react and ultimately trigger a self-healing process. Dear viewers, what we just heard, we've heard it more often. And I'm aware that these reactions and these stimuli actually take place. And that you can really treat yourself with a blessing. But you still have to stand on it yourself. And if you are still critical, then maybe you should use the idea we just heard. That you can also test yourself. Don't buy the cat in the bag, test it. And if you are convinced of it yourself, then you can really do so much good for the body, for nerves, and for the movement apparatus in general. And for the hormones, for the happiness hormones, and for the brain stimulation. To really make a contribution to getting healthy. That's my wish for you. And thank you both very much for showing me do this. As I said, I'm always happy to do this. Really happy to do the moderation.
If you want more information, we are happy to be available. But we will definitely need the whole weekend for that.
We'll keep in touch. And I hope we were able to bring a wonderful stone into play here. I wish you all the best. Until next time, see you soon. Thank you for watching Swiss Health TV QS24. Please also go to Wikisana. All shows are compiled for you, free of advertisement. And down here we have the button to YouTube, our channel. All the best. Until next time, goodbye.